Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for ProfNet's Google Plus Hangout on Air. My name is Polina Opelbaum, and I'm a Community Services Specialist at PR Newswire's ProfNet. During today's Hangout, we'll talk about how journalists can use Google Plus to help build their brand. Google Plus offers many great opportunities for journalists, such as expanding your reach beyond Facebook and Twitter, using Hangouts to crowdsource ideas, and many other things which we'll be discussing today with our two guests, Sarah Hill and Julio Ojeda Zapata. Now, before we begin, I just wanted to remind everyone that if you have any questions or comments, to please tweet us using the hashtag.
Thanks for joining us today for
ProfNet Hangout.
Google Plus Hangout on Air. My name is Polina Opelbaum, and I'm a Community Services Specialist at PR Newswire's ProfNet. During today's Hangout, we'll talk about how journalists...
I'm sorry about that. I apologize for the technical error. So if you have any questions or comments, please tweet us using the hashtag ProfNet Hangout. So before we begin, I just wanted to have the two guests introduce themselves. Sarah Hill, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, my name is Sarah Hill, and I work for the Veterans United Network. I am a brand broadcaster. I am a former journalist, and I was in television journalism for more than 20 years. I'm interested in human media as the new layer of social, wearable technology like a Google Glass and how journalists might be able to use it, and also about crowdsourcing for stories here on Google+. Nice to meet everyone.
Julio?
Yeah, I'm Julio Ojeda Zapata. I'm a technology writer at the St. Paul Pioneer Press, which is part of the digital first media chain. I'm just a lifelong nerd and technology lover, and so I really like my beat. And social media is another fascination, and I've been using Google Plus very, very, very heavily since its inception. I'm probably the most active Google Plus user at my newspaper company. It's my favorite social network along with Twitter, and I've found it to be extremely useful.
Okay, great, thank you. Now, can you guys tell me about what drew you to this social media platform? Sarah?
I was drawn by the people. We experimented when I was working for the NBC affiliate in Columbia, Missouri at KLMU TV, which is affiliated with the Missouri School of Journalism. I got into Google Plus by experimenting with Hangouts, with this platform behind the scenes of the newscast. I was highly interested in human real-time communication versus text-based social. So there are two kinds of social media. There's text-based social, which is chatting with individuals' avatars on Facebook or Twitter and having asynchronous conversations, he said, and then you wait for the comment, she said. And then there are live real-time human media conversations via video chat. This is a video chat room in the middle of a crowdsourcing tool, and also since it's connected to YouTube, it's also a free broadcast tower for journalists, in addition to a big metal stick in the ground for some call-it TV stations out there. So I got interested in Google Plus by it being a global platform and the ability to crowdsource for global stories right from within Columbia, Missouri, stories that were going on with the Oslo bombing in Norway. It is a very fascinating tool to bring journalists not only closer to their audience by chatting with their avatars, but closer to the audience by seeing the whites of their eyes via Hangouts.
Thank you. Julio, what about yourself? What drew you to Google Plus as a journalist?
I'm a heavy user of Google services. I have been for many years. So Google Plus was a natural because I already live in that Google ecosystem. So I was all in from the very beginning simply because it was a Google social network. And I also came to like Google Plus because it's a place where a lot of very interesting conversations go on, and these conversations very often occur among people that have similar interests, which is a little different from Facebook, where you to a very large extent interact with people because they happen to be old school buddies or family members and so forth. Google Plus is a little different. It's a lot of people are sort of clustering together based on their interests and having these very interesting conversations that are easier to have on Google Plus than say on Twitter, because Twitter you're very limited by the format. So having longer conversations instead of as opposed to Twitter is one reason, and having those conversations with a broader cross-section of humanity based on your interests as opposed to, just friends and family members on Facebook. So that's why.
Sarah, what do you think, how do you think that Google Plus is different from what Julio mentioned, Twitter or Facebook? What are the differences between the platforms?
The differences are the ability to crowdsource in a more detailed manner from within the platform, and the ability to bring those sources into a face-to-face conversation with you. So for instance, on Twitter or Facebook, you have the ability to search on a limited basis for instance, with the Oslo bombing. I would have the ability to go to Twitter or Facebook and type in Oslo bombing and try to find individuals who had tweeted about the Oslo bombing or something like that. I could reach out to them and have a text-based conversation with them, but if I wanted to bring them into a real-time conversation with them and record their comments just as if they were right next to me, I would have to go to Skype and have a screen record. I couldn't have a real-time conversation with them. It was asynchronous communication. So the beauty of Google Plus is that it's this powerful crowdsourcing tool of Google within Google Plus, combined with YouTube, which is a broadcasting platform, and Hangout. So I can bring those sources into a face-to-face conversation with me. I can broadcast that conversation live to anyone in the world who wants to watch it. And what that does is reduces the physical space between you and your sources when you are having a face-to-face connected conversation. And so this is one of the world's first human media platforms. It's not just text-based social media, but it's human media, and it's allowing journalists and news organizations and brand journalists the ability to develop their roots of social, not just having a wide following, but deeply. There is science behind the fact that interacting with individuals face-to-face is superior in some instances to text-based communication for brand trust. Journalists out there are constantly trying to build trust. There was a study not too long ago from Cornell University, you may have seen it, about cereal boxes and why there are eyes on cereal boxes and why those cereal boxes are staring at you. Well, the reason why in that study, they found that eye contact increases brand trust by about 16%. So imagine that with a journalist who's either trying to get someone to go on camera or someone to go on the record and have a conversation with them. If you're a journalist, you know how many times on the phone you've tried to win somebody over to get them to talk about their story. But if you can get them into a video chat, and say, hey, let me tell you what I'm trying to do, and to increase that trust between you and your source. That's huge for a journalist.
Absolutely. That's a very interesting study, and that makes a lot of sense. So now that we discussed why it's so important for a journalist to use Google+, let's talk about the basics a little bit. What should they include in their Google+ profile when they're setting it up? Julio?
Well, the one interesting thing about Google Plus is if you set up your profile correctly with all of your professional, all of your personal information and so forth, it sort of becomes, in a sense, it sort of becomes your business card on the internet or your homepage on the internet. You may already have a home site, like for instance, I have a personal WordPress-based homepage, but Google, to a very large extent, serves that purpose because it's Google, and people are using the Google search engine. So when they search for you, if you have your profile set up correctly, people are going to find that when they're searching for your name. And if they go in there and you have it, set up properly, they're going to learn a whole lot about you very, very, very quickly. And there's also, it's a little hard to explain verbally, briefly, but if you set up your Google Plus account in a particular way, when you write stories, or like for instance, I as a Pioneer Press reporter, if I have my Google Plus account set up the right way, and if I have my personal site set up the right way, when a link for when a link for one of your stories appears in a Google search, your Google Plus avatar and all your Google Plus information appears within that hit as well. So if this is an important thing to do. It's a little hard for me to explain how to set it up here. It's slightly complicated, But once you have it set up, every time I, as a Pioneer Press reporter, write a story and somebody searches for that story on Google and finds it in a Google search, my Google Plus information is part of that hit as well. My Google Plus avatar, how many followers, how many people have circled me, and so forth. So it's very important for your personal brand development.
Thank you. Sarah, do you have anything to add as far as what journalists should be including on their profile?
Yeah, Julio explained it really well, but journalists need to be experts on something called author rank. If you have no idea what that is, it's okay. I didn't either until I cozied up to some experts here at Veterans United who are experts on author rank. Google it, become familiar with it, and that will let you know why that real estate on a search page is so important. When people are choosing which news story about a particular event to click on, if your profile picture is next to it, you are then viewed as more credible, or people are more likely to click on that than they are anything else. So that's how you get your profile picture on there. You connect it with your Google Plus account, and you make darn sure that your Google Plus profile has the keywords in there that you want people to find you by. The stories that I do are about veterans and military families, so I have veterans in my bio. Perhaps you're a reporter about technology. You want those words in your bio. Medicine, any of the keywords that if people were going to search you, that's how you want them to find you. And you also want to put journalist in there so that anybody who goes to Google Plus and wants to find medical journalists or journalists in the Columbia, Missouri area, they can search those search terms in there and come up with a list and find your postings. So it's all about being discoverable and your rank in the eyes of Google.
And in addition, you want to in your Google Plus profile, you want to make sure all the email addresses that are relevant to your profession are in there. Number one, and then number two, again, do as my colleague said, search for author rank. And one of the key geeky little steps you have to take is to in your site where your content appears, you have to have a little snippet of HTML that Google provides. It's not even visible, but just make sure it's on your site, that little snippet of HTML. And then a couple of other steps, which you will find if you search for author rank. Once you've jumped through all the hoops, then magically your Google Plus identity and all the content, journalism content that you're creating elsewhere, will be sort of magically linked together, and that's where all the author rank magic happens.
Yeah. And something else too, because journalists might not be, that might not be a native language when talking about author rank. There are services out there that have the ability to educate journalists about author rank, and you can go to a Google Help Out and search blogger help. Like if you want help with your blog or WordPress help, and someone can join you via video chat, and they can help you out right within that video chat as if they came in your office and did it for you. So if you don't speak HTML, no worries. Open up a help out, search on help outs, and someone's there to help you.
Definitely. Author rank is a really great tool. Thank you for talking about that. Another main component to setting up your Google Plus profile is the circles. So if you guys can please talk a little bit about the purpose of the circles. Sarah, if you'd like to start.
Sure. What I do when I place individuals in circles and first, and my apologies for your echo on my account. I think it's coming through Julio's right now, but so circles, yes. What I do when I first circle individuals, I put them in what I call the lobby, and then later on I put them into different circles. I have circles split up into people who are okay to put on a Hangout on air, meaning these are individuals who will not say a curse word or something like that, or something inappropriate. These are people who I know and trust and who will give me accurate and quality information. So I have a circle called Hangout Approved. I have circles just for veterans. I have circles for civilians who love veterans. I have a circle for key influencers who I check every day, who I want to pay attention to their content. So those are just some of the ways. However you decide to split them up is going to depend on your own particular workflow, but I find circle before you ask questions, circle first and ask questions later, and that put them in a lobby so that you can see their content, and then you can split them out after that. And Julio, I think your microphone was muted, but go ahead if you can unmute it. Yeah, it's at the top of the screen. Yep. Click it one more time, Julio.
What was the question again?
We were talking about circles, the purpose of them, and how you personally use them to organize.
Well, circles are great because they're basically little buckets. Like if you follow a bunch of people on Google+, the circles are basically little buckets where you can sort of organize people by subject matter or whatever. You can organize them any way you want. I have a technology circle. I have a particular fascination with Macintosh stuff, so I have an Apple circle. I'm a geek who likes science fiction, so I have a science fiction circle. People who are local to my area, personal friends of mine. It isn't rocket science. They're just basically little buckets where you just kind of organize your people. You can do the same thing on Facebook and on Twitter, but in my experience, the way those services have it set up is a little more complicated. Like Twitter lists are a little harder to understand. Google has made it very, very easy just to organize your people. And I must confess I'm a little behind in my circle organizing. I really need to get on that, but it's very, very handy, especially if you're trying to follow a lot of people on Google+. You can sort of filter if you just want to see people in a particular category. Just go to that circle. That's all you see. That's basically all there is to it. And it's and when you find somebody on the web you want to follow, if they have their their Google+ widget in their site, you can just kind of hover your mouse over that, and all of your circles will appear magically in a little pop down, and you can sort of check the right one. So Google makes it very easy.
And another handy tool when it comes to circles for journalists, if you keep your circles under 100 or less, you have the ability to notify people via their email account of your content. So if you keep your circles large, when you share, you have the ability to check a tick box underneath that post that says notify the circle of this post. And if your circles are small enough, 100 or less, you can know those 100 people can get an email ping that you have some content that they need to check out. Obviously, you don't want to be spammy, and you want to be selective about when you use that ping box, but keep that in mind that's why it's advantageous to keep those circles to a limit of 100 or less. And we don't know from Google what that limit is on what they allow people to email and what they don't. But a good number is 100 or less, and it used to work as early as a few months ago. Those individuals, those 100 people, would get an email notification. So just an idea not to keep those circles way large, because at some point you might want to notify them of your content.
So I also want to talk about followers. Who should journalists be following when they sign up and set up their Google+ profile? Julio, if you'd like to start.
I'm sorry, who I want to follow on Google+?
Who you think journalists should be following when they set up their profile on Google+? If they should be following other journalists or perhaps experts, what would be your recommendation?
Tough question for me to answer with any specificity because it really varies, by journalists. But I find a lot of skepticism among my peers about Google+. They're not really sure what to do with it. And what I tell them sort of goes back to my earlier point. Google+ is a great place to find people within particular subject areas. Like I have these, I've been having these vigorous conversations with one of the photographers at the Pioneer Press. I keep telling him, Ben, Google+ is a paradise if you're interested in photography, because there are a lot of very prominent photographers that are very active on Google+, and they display their photos on Google+, and they have these wonderful conversations. And I haven't convinced him yet. I haven't swayed him yet to do that. But that's just one example. If you go on Google+ and you're interested in a particular subject area, politics, technology, photography, whatever, you're very likely to find very active people, very active conversations, revolving around that subject area, and you're likely to meet a lot of people with whom you're gonna be able to learn a lot and have a lot of fun with. And so that's one of the things I tell people at Google Plus. Forget about looking for your school friends and your family members and so forth. You're probably not going to be on there. They're probably still going to be on Facebook. Google Plus, on the other hand, is a great place to find people you don't know that just happen to share your interests. Just search for your interests on Google Plus, and you will very likely find people with whom you can interact and befriend and sort of gain professional insight. So that's kind of my advice.
Yeah, absolutely, and I couldn't agree with that more. And communities is another place to find people, to find those strangers who are interested in what you're interested in. Communities are essentially, if you could describe it in Facebook terms, but they are many, like Facebook groups, but they are many communities within Google Plus that also have timelines that allow you to post and to search in there for people who have similar interests. A lot of journalists have also done circle shares of other journalists. I would encourage you to follow other journalists who can help you navigate the platform, and search within there. Veterans are individuals who we are communicating with. So any veterans group, I just type veterans into Google Plus, and up pops a list of all of the people on Google Plus who have veterans listed in their profile. So it's real handy and real detailed to search in there just from within the platform.
Shari, you mentioned communities as one way to connect with other journalists. What if you'd like to find others to follow you? What recommendations would you give?
I would encourage you to join Hangouts, because that's how, before hosting Hangouts yourself, join some so you can understand how they work. And once you're in Hangouts, people follow you. Some of the most active people on the platform are in this space of Hangouts, connecting face-to-face. And when people who have a large amount of followers are in Hangouts, they have the potential to circle you. Circle and be circled. So the more people you circle, the higher the propensity that you will be circled back. Share interesting and relevant content that you create, and then also curate interesting and relevant content from the people who follow you. Anytime you share a post, give a hat tip and mention the person who shared that post with you. Mentions in posting also get individuals to draw attention to your profile. So use the free broadcast stick that we call Hangouts on Air, which is what you're watching right now, a Hangout that streams live on YouTube. Join Hangouts, host Hangouts, share and be shared, and circle and be circled.
Julio, do you have any other recommendations of how journalists can build a following on Google+?
Well, I'm going to be brutally honest. There's no magic formula for very quickly, very easily building a big following. As on Twitter and Facebook, it's a lot of hard work. You may along the way, catch a lucky break. For instance, Robert Scoble, who's very prominent on Google Plus, at one time put me in a journalist circle, and then he shared that circle with his friends. And I was kind of a funny story. I was taking a shower, and I was in the shower, and I kept hearing these ding, 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 ding coming from my computer, and that was all the people following that circle, and as a result, following me. So within a very short span of time, I had this big following. But since then, it's been a lot of hard work, and really what you really want to do is publish quality content. It's kind of the bottom line. Be active on Google+. Show that you take Google+ seriously and you use it as a place to publish quality content. And if you do that, very slowly over time, you will build a following. You have to take it seriously, and what I find among my journalists and peers very often is they don't take it. They don't really consider it very important. They are very conscious of Facebook as an important social network in certain ways, and Twitter as well. A lot of journalists seem to put Google Plus into a different category as something that's not really worth their time, not very important, kind of confusing. They don't know what to do with it, and so they just don't put in the time to A, understand Google Plus, and B, invest the time in making it an important place to be. And I compare Google Plus to blogging. when you're active on Google Plus and you're publishing, lengthy quality posts, you're essentially blogging. It's kind of a blog. In fact, a lot of prominent bloggers have retired their traditional blogs, and they're doing all their air quotes here blogging on Google Plus. That's one way to look at it. I have blogs, traditional blogs, but I also, a lot of my tech writing, long form tech writing, is on Google Plus, and that's one of the reasons I'm gradually building a following, because I have stuff there that people find compelling and want to read.
Yeah, and think about it too as a way not just to give your readers or your viewers text content, but give them video content. So say if you are covering some big traffic accident somewhere, and traffic is backed up for miles, you might be live tweeting that event and letting people know blow by blow what's happening and what the update is on that traffic accident. But you also have the ability with Google Plus to do what we call live hanging. Instead of having an asynchronous, broadcast to your audience, you can open up a Hangout and say, hey, this is what it looks like live right now from your smartphone at this traffic accident. And oh, by the way, if you'd like to hop into this live Hangout right now and ask me questions about what I'm seeing on this breaking news event and have a real-time conversation with me, here's the link to join that broadcast. So it gives you a human media component to everything before that you've done as a text-based relationship. And that's the value added of Google Plus compared to all of the other platforms, is that you can take your viewers and your readers and propel them right next to you as if they were there, as if they were talking to you live at that traffic accident or at the city council meeting or the verdict. I mean, the beauty of this platform is the live video component.
Definitely. Julio, you mentioned that Google Plus could be used as a platform to post the content. So if a journalist writes an article or puts together a blog post, do you encourage them to always post it onto their Google Plus page, or should they sometimes post others' content on there as well?
Well, I've experimented. I've sometimes posted something on one of my blogs and posted the full identical content in Google Plus as well. Sometimes I'll post something on my blog in complete form and then excerpt it on Google Plus and post a link. Sometimes I'll publish something on Google Plus that is original and it appears nowhere else. And to be quite honest with you, I'm still in the process of experimenting and seeing where Google Plus sort of fits in, and I kind of mix it up. I do different things. And it can be a little tricky because, like, for instance, if you're part of a media company, you have to sort of, your superiors might ask you, well, if you're posting on Google Plus instead of on your work blog, then we're not getting any of those hits, which is a legitimate concern. And so I'm still kind of figuring this all out. And one of the things I do is I just make an effort to create original content that will be on my work blogs or sites and get the hits, and also create separate, equally compelling content that is on Google Plus. But then I use that as a way to sort of drive traffic to my personal site. So it's tricky. You have to sort of have this conversation with yourself. You have to have a conversation with your superiors and sort of figure out where it all fits in. But I think it's important for media organizations to take Google Plus seriously and to try to integrate it into the routine, because it's a great way to get conversations started. It's a great way to increase your visibility, to increase the visibility of your media organization. Really make a commitment to use it, to experiment with it. One media organization may not necessarily use Google Plus as another media organization would. There's one particular facet which is interesting. Some media organizations are using Google Apps. Google Apps is basically they're using Gmail as their work email. Like my Digital First Media organization recently switched to Google Apps. So we became a Google house. We use Google Calendar for scheduling. We don't use Outlook anymore. We use Gmail. we're all Google all the time in our internal communication. So if that is the case, you're already halfway there to using Google Plus, because there's a Google Plus account associated with the Gmail that you're using for work. So heck, use it. Use it, and that's what's frustrating. I see a lot of my colleagues, they have this tool within reach, and they're not really using it. They could use it for public posting. Since everybody in a particular media organization is already using Gmail and has a Google Plus account, they could be using Google Plus for private sharing of information within a media organization. I think it's a great idea. Don't see it happening a lot. It's kind of a no-brainer for me. So I keep pushing that idea in the hope that it'll take root.
Sarah, you talked about in the beginning about using Google Plus to crowdsource. So if you're looking to crowdsource article ideas or post ideas, how can you use Google Plus to do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, to find ideas, well, the way that you find ideas is by following interesting people on the platform. When you first sign up for Google Plus, if you have no idea whom to follow, but chances are, if you're a journalist, obviously you have people that you follow on the other platforms. Follow them on Google Plus too. Look at their feed. It is a wealth of information for story ideas, and you would be surprised the quality content that is shared on Google Plus compared to hearing about your friend's baby or engagement picture. Nothing wrong with that at all. That's information that you're interested in as well. But professionally, to find story ideas, look within the communities, deep within some of the communities that you follow, whether that be technology, medicine, perhaps your beat is crime. There are other journalists in there talking about stories that they're covering. If you're a broadcaster, there's a broadcast journalism group that's in there. I have a group about human media. Wealth of information to discover story ideas within your niche, in addition to reach out to some of those individuals and bring them into a face-to-face conversation with you to chat about it, perhaps if they're not in your physical location.
Julio, do you use Google Plus to crowdsource any article ideas?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I crowdsource on social media a lot. And I can't really honestly say that my crowdsourcing on Google Plus is very different from how I do it on Facebook and Twitter. So I consider Google Plus to be sort of the third leg of a tripod in my social media crowdsourcing toolkit. When I'm working on particular stories, but I'm looking for sources, I'm looking for people that know about what the story's about. I'll put that out on social media. I'll say, hey, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Google Plus, I'll ask people, hey, do you know anything about this? Can you point me in the right direction? And I never know which of the social media networks is going to pay off for me, so I just make sure I use all three. And in my case, combining Twitter, Facebook, and Google Plus, we're talking like 60,000 plus people. That's a lot of eyeballs. So that inevitably pays off for me, in addition to using traditional services like ProfNet. So when I'm working on a story and I need people to talk to, I just blast out my needs, to all the logical suspects, and inevitably one of them pays off. I just don't know which one it's going to be.
Great, thank you. Just a quick reminder for those who've joined us today, if you can please tweet any of your comments or questions using the hashtag ProfNet Hangout. Now, I wanted to talk about Hangouts and Hangouts on Air. How can journalists use that for interviews or making it more of an informational hangout? Sarah, if you'd like to start?
Yeah, you can essentially use it to deepen the life or extend the life of your news story. So say you had a big controversial story in your town about wanting to change trash service or something like that. You do the story, and then you can tag the story saying, we're going to have a conversation about what you think about changing the trash service. Join our live Google Plus Hangout on Air after this newscast and have a conversation about it. That's one way to extend the life. Another way that we just mentioned, an alternative to live tweeting during a breaking news event, live hanging, open up a Hangout during that live event, invite viewers to come in and ask you questions about what they are seeing on that live breaking news event and have a face-to-face real-time conversation with viewers. I have used Hangouts on air behind the scenes of a newscast, and here at the Veterans United Network, we've also used Hangouts behind the scenes and on air to bring sources in to talk with us live in real time. Viewers are highly curious about what goes on in a television news studio, and you would be surprised how interested they are at seeing the guy stand at the weather screen and ask you questions about it. We as television journalists sometimes have had a tendency to keep our viewers at arm's length, and we talk to them before and after a newscast. But our relationship during the newscast was sometimes just a text-based relationship on a text-based social platform. But with Google Plus and Google Plus Hangouts on Air, you have the ability to allow viewers to see what you're seeing live in real time, allow them to contribute to that breaking news event or conversation. So for instance, one time during a live newscast, there was a crime that had occurred, and I was trying to figure out where specifically this was. Well, before I had gotten the words out of my mouth, another viewer that was in the Hangout had pulled up where the crime had located on their Google Maps, shared that screen during the Hangout, and our director was able to share that map that our viewer had provided, during the newscast on the screen. So having individuals in your Hangout during a live broadcast provides you with 9 other people who could be helping you produce your content, produce vetted content. Obviously, that content has to be vetted. That map had to be vetted as well. But it extends the hands of a newscast far beyond, the one producer, or in many markets, the 0 producers that they have, because the host of the show is also producing that program as well. So many, I could talk your ear off, which I'm not going to, so many uses for Hangouts behind the scenes and Hangouts on the air for journalists. The ability in radio, people in radio or people in a text-based medium who are journalists, you have the ability to add a visual component and a live real-time component to your text-based writings. It is a broadcast tower in the middle of a crowdsourcing tool that you can keep in your pocket, and then with Google Glass, you also have the ability to have that broadcast tower for your face. So we are using this now to do stories and virtual tours for veterans to see their memorial. And so this and wearables, not just Google Glass, but all kinds of wearables are an interesting tool for journalists. You don't have to have it on your face 24/7, but you do, and you can use it as another tool just as you would your smartphone, and it's hands-free. So you can walk through that parade or walk through that breaking news event, pick up items, push through doors, and allow people to see exactly from your point of view.
Thank you, Sarah. Julio, do you use Hangouts, and do you have any other recommendations for journalists who want to use them?
I must confess I haven't used Hangouts a ton. Sarah's more of an expert in that regard, but there's one obvious use for Hangouts that I've stumbled on, which is if I'm interviewing somebody for a story who just happens to be Google Plus savvy, I will suggest to that person that the interview I do with him, instead of doing it on the phone, I just do it via Google Hangout on air, which is then recorded for posterity. You can go to YouTube and see it saved there, and then you can pull that video down to your computer if you want and edit it into something a little more polished. So I've done that a number of times. Mike Elgin, he's a very prominent Google Plus user. I suggest you people follow. One time I interviewed him that way in the middle of a presentation that I was giving about Google Plus, which was very handy. So it's something that my media organization, Digital First Media, has recommended, that just if you're going to interview somebody, just go ahead and interview them on Google Plus instead of the traditional way, and that way you have the video and you can do whatever you want with it.
Thank you, Julio. Now, for someone who's looking to learn a little bit more about Google Plus and Google Plus Hangouts, do you guys have any resources that you can suggest? Sarah?
Yeah, I would say you check out the many great communities. If you search Google Plus newbie within Google Plus, you'll find not only people who are posting with information about newbies, but communities and communities that are talking about Hangouts on Air. There's a Google Plus Hangout on Air community where all we talk about are Hangouts on Air. So those communities are a gold mine for people who are new to the platform to learn about how it works. And again, the easiest way to learn about how it works is to join some of the public Hangouts out there. You don't have to know anybody. Hop in the Hangout and say, hi, I'm new here. What advice would you give me? Or get your questions answered. Those communities are a wealth of information for new people.
Julio, do you have anything to add?
Well, I would suggest there are 3 people on Google Plus that if you're going to follow anybody, you should definitely follow them. And I've already mentioned 2 of them. Robert Scoble, who's a very enthusiastic, some people say overly enthusiastic tech guy out there, but he has a very he has a large following on Google Plus, and he's very prolific and very enthusiastic, and he's somebody to watch and derive inspiration from. Mike Elgin, who's currently working at Twit, but he's a pro Google Plus user, and he's a great teacher. If you just watch him use Google Plus, you're going to learn a lot. He's one of those people that I mentioned that doesn't blog in the traditional way anymore. He uses Google Plus for that. And the third person is Trey Radcliffe. Trey Radcliffe is a very well-known photographer who I believe lives in New Zealand. But he has, I believe, 4 billion people following him on Google Plus. And he's another model. He's another source of inspiration. If you follow those 3 people, you're going to go a long way to learning the Google Plus ropes.
Yeah, I would just echo that, and Trey Radcliffe has billions of profile views to his Google Plus page. He shares amazing content, and he's doing some fascinating things with photo walks as well. And I'm going to throw out some lesser-known names that people probably perhaps maybe haven't heard of or aren't familiar with on the platform, but just for new people, and that would be Chad Lafarge. Chad is a wealth of information for producing Hangouts and knowing how they work and how they communicate with YouTube, and tips and tricks, but that would be Chad Lafarge. He's also a Navy veteran, by the way. Mike Downs teaches digital literacy in the UK, and his Twitter address is @MikeDownsMedia, and he also shares a lot of great information. Mark Traphagen is a great one to follow in regards to author rank and understanding author rank. Ronnie Bincer also shares great information for newbies. It's his birthday today. Happy birthday, Ronnie. And he shares information about Hangouts on Air as well as following some of the Googlers. Chi Chu is an engineer, the one who created this space for Hangouts. He shares fascinating information in regards to this space as well. I could go on and on, but I won't. But that's a partial list of some people that you might not be familiar with who are sharing some fascinating things on the platform. Jairus Miller for Glass, she posts a lot of great information about glass and wearables. Jairus, Jeris, and her last name is Miller.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for all that great information. That's about all the time we have today. Thank you all for joining us, and a huge thank you to our guests, Sarah Hill and Julio Hayda Zapata. Thanks again.
Thank you. It's great to see you, and good luck with Google Plus.